and engage in learning out of curiosity, out of interest, out of love, out of enjoyment, in order to achieve your own intellectual and personal goals. These students are passionate, they're focused, they try hard, they're enthusiastic. All of you, to be English language teachers, have to have had that intrinsic motivation. And I think more so nowadays, I think it is coming through more because a lot of what students interact with outside of the classroom in the online environment is in English. You know, films, songs, cartoons, magazines. They have access to all of these and they show greater interest in them. Therefore, I think actually, in the real world, students are becoming more intrinsically motivated because they're realizing what learning English can actually allow them, enable them to do. And as Brooks points out from his research, learners who are intrinsically motivated are more likely to do better academically, and therefore, as teachers, our goal is to try to help them develop their internal motivation, which is somewhat of a paradox, right? How can an external force, the teacher, help a learner develop their internal motivation? It's a paradox, right? So the question then we want to try to answer is how can we do this? How can we develop that intrinsic motivation without making it seem too extrinsic in terms of we're learning English to pass tests, pass exams, etc. So, before we go into that and share my ideas, just very quickly in the chat box, how do you at least try to help your students develop their internal motivation for learning English? So, a quick kind of round table sharing ideas here, okay? Let's see what amazing ideas you guys come up with. Okay, songs, appeal to their interests, meet interesting people, praise, encouragement. Encouragement is not intrinsic because it's coming from you, it's saying well done. So they're working hard to please you, the teacher, therefore it's an extrinsic motivational technique. Give examples of celebrities, potentially, engaging materials, something is inconsistent audio. Get them interested in watching movies, global topics. Yes. Tickle their interest. I love that expression. Thank you, Ralph. Life topics, games. Yeah. Show some of the benefits of learning English, definitely formative assessment. Yes, bringing foreigners into the class. Yes. I've very often been a show and tell object. Okay, great. There's lots of really nice ideas, but a lot of what you're saying is kind of external, outside of the classroom, like the films, the music, etc. But not that we can't guide our students towards that in some ways. Okay, let's move on then and look at our 7 strategies for developing motivation and engagement in language learners in our classrooms. Now, the first thing we have to consider is what kind of learners we actually have in our class. We have teenagers, and teenagers, they can be tricky souls. We've all been teenagers. We all know what it's like to be a teenager and how we feel, right? There's a nice quote here from Angela in the meeting referring to that kind of aspect. Teachers who are most successful in engaging learners, motivating them, develop activities with students' basic psychological and intellectual needs in mind. So clearly there's a very real need to know our learners, knowing how they like to learn, knowing what appeals to them, how their minds work. And like I say, we've all been teenagers, we all know what it's like and the difficulties that their attitudes can bring to the classroom.
Комментарии перед на
So,
английском.
that's the thing. Know your learners.
Этот говорит мужик.
But
Это
there is one
иностранец.
thing that is kind of I wouldn't say universal, but it is very common amongst younger learners, younger teenage learners, even sort of higher
А
age
если
teenage
было
learners.
слышно, было...
And it's what Mona touched on earlier in the young learner context. And it's that ability to engage and inspire learners by arousing natural curiosity of the topic. If you're interested in something, you want to find out more about it.
What a stupid man!
Man? Quizzes are a great way to arouse curiosity.
Надо написать.
Because you give them
А как
information
oh man как
they
пишется?
want to
Мен или
know
ман?
more about it.
Я напишу.
They wanna know the
Oh
answer.
man.
It's a human trait. Someone asks you a question, you want to know what the answer is.
Так это что
And
означает?
it just grabs their attention, it grabs their focus when it comes to that. Learners are born inquisitive, and they love weird, interesting facts and ideas, right? And then, this is a really nice quote here. The more curious a child is, no matter what age, the more you learn. Nurturing a child's curiosity is the most important way you can help them to become a lifelong learner. Lifelong learner equals motivated learner, because you're going all the way through. You have that determination to go all the way through.
Ой, ну да.
I should say that there are some really nice ideas coming through in the chat box as well. So, if curiosity is a desire to learn and an eagerness to explore, well, what else is it? What else is it about curiosity that makes learning a positive experience? And if it's a positive experience, one that helps them feel more motivated intrinsically to learn about it. So, there's some interesting research out of the United States recently. Actually, by raising the students' curiosity, it makes subsequent learning more rewarding. So, how does it work? Well, researchers found that when participants' curiosity had been sparked, there was not only increased activity within the hippocampus, part of the brain, which is where the brain creates memories, but there's also increased activity in the brain circuit that is related to reward and, get this, pleasure. And the circuit is the same one that lights up when we get something we really like, such as chocolate or a present or money or anything like that. And it relies on this chemical called dopamine. And dopamine is a feel-good chemical that relays messages between neurons in our brains, giving the sort of high. So, not only will arousing students' curiosity help them remember what they learned in their lessons, but it makes it a pleasurable experience.
Hey, everybody.
Maybe not as pleasurable as ice cream or pocket money, but pleasurable nonetheless.
Kit.
But you know what? I don't need to tell you this. I think most teachers know instinctively the importance of fostering inquisitive minds. But I think it's reassuring to have the science behind it that backs it up, that makes it undeniably satisfying. So curiosity equals excitement, pleasure. Think about that dopamine rush. So, how can we kind of raise this curiosity? Well, one really simple way is through visual imagery, showing them odd things, weird things. Now, this might be a traditional street somewhere in Ukraine. It's familiar, it's not interesting. What is interesting is a house like this. Because you see a house like this, and all of a sudden I look at it and I have questions about this house. I'm curious because it's so different. What kind of questions do you have about this house? Yeah, good one, Victoria. How do you get into it? How do you enter? Yeah, who lives there? Where is it? I'm thinking more practical things about it, like, is there a lift in there? Where are the bedrooms? How's it built? Cool, Rapunzel says Alfredo. Absolutely. Why would you build a house like this? Keith. Why not? So all of a sudden, you want to know the answer to these questions. Your dopamine levels are increased. Even something less familiar like this, a boathouse, or a tent in Mongolia, or an igloo. I mean, I've always been fascinated by igloos since I was a child. It's like, well, how can you live in an igloo? Where do they get their electricity? How do they stay warm? Where's the bedroom? Where's the kitchen? Where's the sitting room? So it's very, very unusual. I think the unusual